In the last video, we went ahead and made a really silly kind of sketch of a map. What we're going to do at this point is we're going to dissect our house area, which is here, and look at just kind of breaking that down into pieces so that we can begin to model it. Now, we're going to first do that in Unity. So I'm going to pause the video and I'm going to go ahead and open up Unity. At this point, I'm using Unity 3.5 Pro. Before we begin, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create a new project. Now, this is the Unity splash screen that opens once you've created a new project. All I'm concerned with at this point is the character controller package. I don't need necessarily any of these pro assets for now. I can always import them later into my project. I'm going to go ahead and click Browse at this point. And then in my Documents folder, I'm just going to make a new folder. And I'm going to call this folder kid_game. And that's the name of my game. So let's go ahead and select this folder. And I'm going to hit Select Folder. And then Create. After I click Create, it's going to do a build. So I'm going to pause it to spare you that. Here we are in Unity Pro. So the first thing I want to do is go ahead and save off a level. So I'm going to go to File, Save Scene As. I'm just going to name it level_01. And I'm going to hit Save. Now in this level_01, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and sort of just box out our entire level. And we're going to do that sort of in Unity first. Now I'm going to go to Game Object, Create Other, and just make a cube. Now this cube is going to represent my ground plane. So I'm going to go ahead and R and sort of shrink that down. Now what I want to do at this point is I want to drag in my first person controller. Now in the Project tab, if I open up Standard Assets, Character Controllers, I'm just going to select the first person controller and drag it to my ground plane. Now what you'll notice right away is the ground plane is a great deal smaller than my first person controller. So I want to sort of keep this in mind since my game is going to be consistent of this first person controller. So I'm going to drag up my ground plane a little bit. Now if we refer back to our map, you'll notice that my world is on a ground plane. And in the corner is where my house is, and the X is where my character is. Right now I'm just going to sort of gray box out my level so I can sort of see it a little bit better. So what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to look at my map from the top view. And the way I'm sort of able to move around is I can click up here for my pan tool. I can click this for my move tool, and that'll move my object around. This will rotate my object, and this will scale my object. It's also Q, W, E, and R. If I hold the Alt key and I press the left mouse, I can actually pan. Now I'm actually panning the camera. I'm not moving the 3D model. If I want to zoom, I can hold Alt and scroll in and out with the wheel. If I want to pan the camera, I Alt and I middle mouse click, and that allows me to pan the camera. So let's go ahead and select our first person controller from the hierarchy. Now the hierarchy tab is what we're actually seeing in the view. So if I select my first person controller and I hit W, I'm just going to select the arrows and I'm going to move him where I think the room could be. And if you look down here, this is the game window. And that's what my character is actually seeing through the main camera. Now if your game looks something like this, where it's stacked on top of each other, or they're sort of hidden next to each other like this in separate tabs, you can actually drag and move these different tabs around. So if I left click and hold down the mouse button on the word game, I can move my individual tabs around and put them below each other like this. Now what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to go ahead and create another cube. So create game object, create other, cube. You'll notice that it automatically selected it and it's all the way over here. Now the cube is below the ground plane, so what I want to do is I want to move it up here into my view. So I'm just going to go to Game Object, Move to View, and it'll actually align it to the center of my view. So now I can sort of move it around. What I'm going to do is just build a generic gray box of my level. So I'm going to hit R, and I'm going to scale that, and just scale up my walls like this. I'm going to hit spacebar, and that's just going to allow me to zoom into this view. Because for now, this is all I need. Alright, so I'm going to hit W. This is the first wall. I'm going to duplicate this wall by hitting Control D and duplicate it. Hit Control D again, and I'm going to hit R. And what I'm going to do is scale it in this direction, scale it in this direction. And what I'm doing is just creating that back wall. Now this again is not our finalized house. We're going to actually create a room and all of these assets in Maya later. But for now, all I'm doing is I'm sort of building out a room. Alright, I'm going to hit Control D again, and I'm going to scale this wall so it looks something like this. I'm going to hit Control D, I'm going to create another wall. Remember that window that we talked about earlier that we want our character to jump through? We're going to sort of create that window. So again, I'm just scaling and moving down, Control D, scaling and moving up. Alright, so let's go ahead and drag our first person controller into the room. I'm going to position him a little higher. Let's kind of move these walls off just a little bit so we get ourselves a little bit more room. Alright, and I'm going to go ahead and hit spacebar to zoom out. And I'm going to hit play. You see my character falls through the floor, and the reason is he's not high enough off the ground plane. So let's pull him up a little bit more and press play. There we go, he falls and he's fine. Now, what you'll notice in the game window below is everything is completely dark and we don't have any lights in our scene. So we're going to go ahead and go to Game Object, Create Other, Directional Light. And with Unity Pro, so let's go ahead and center that, or make our axis global. We're just going to kind of move it closer to the house. Now, a directional light is sort of the light in your complete scene. Okay. And the way to really see which direction your light is going is to go ahead and turn on shadows. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on soft shadows here. You can see there that let me go ahead and make this local as well. You can see we get some soft shadows in our scene. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this. I'm going to hit W. Again, by copying this light, we create another sun or directional light. Now this light's a little intense. Notice how it's got rid of my shadows. I'm just going to lower the intensity of this a little bit, just so that it softens my shadows a little bit. And I'm going to use this as my sun. So I'm going to go ahead and click my color box here. And I'm just going to go ahead and give it a little tint of orange, because it's midday. And I'm also in my directional light here. I'm just going to name it sun. So select it, and then here I'm just going to type sun. And so now I always know that this is my sun. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and hit play. Now you can see in the game window, I'm able to kind of move around. I'm checking the size and width of the room. And for my game, I'm supposed to be able to jump through this window. So let's test it. I'm hitting spacebar. I'm not able to jump through the window. Okay, so let's go ahead and sort of play with these assets. I'm going to go ahead and select this guy. And if I hold shift, notice how I can select that top box. That's the collision. And that you can adjust the collision that way. I'm just going to go ahead and hit R and scale this down a little bit. I'm going to scale this down a little bit. And I'm going to select all three of these boxes. I'm just going to move it up to give myself a little bit more like this. And again, I might have to scale up the entire room. So if I scale up these walls, let's go ahead and play. I obviously have to scale up the two side walls. I'm going to try to jump through. There we go. I'm able to jump through the window. And again, I'm not terribly concerned. So I'm selecting all three of these walls. I'm not terribly concerned with getting it perfect. I'm just gray boxing or creating a demo level to sort of play test my environment. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and select this wall, hit Control D. I'm going to scale down and scale out. Again, I'm hitting R to select, to use my move tool. I'm going to move this down to the ground. And I'm going to just position a bed here. Alright, and then again in my plan, I had a dresser off to the side over here. I'm going to go ahead and scale down that dresser. And I remember saying that I would just going to put a table lamp here. Now, what I can do is go to Game Object, Create Other, and just create a cylinder. And this can sort of represent my table lamp. Just put it here. This kind of forms the base. Go ahead and hit Control D, and I'm going to go ahead and scale this out. Now, I'd like to point something out here. So this is my table lamp. This is a good time to sort of look around the room and think about, does my room look empty? So if I go ahead and I throw and this is a kid's room, so it's okay if it's a little small. But if I go ahead and throw a door here, just to sort of represent a door, does my room itself look pretty empty? So I'm going to hit play, and I'm going to look around my game environment here. And we have to kind of move these so they're not floating. But I think for now that's okay. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is make sure that nothing is floating. So we're going to pull all these down and over. Okay. Same thing here. Let's put our bed on the floor. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and hit Control S to save my level. In the next video, we're going to go into Maya, and we're going to start to model out a bed.